a lot of us know all too well. I'm sure that most of you listening could probably name what company that is from. If you don't know, it starts with an N and ends with an Edflix. So today we are going to be talking about something called screen time. And in a world where we are filled with technology, we are surrounded by technology all of the time, Netflix, Facebook, Instagram, cell phones, televisions, computers, everything. It's kind of hard to navigate the world of technology with children. It has posed kind of an interesting problem for people who are raising children or have been raising children within the past probably 2 decades or so. Personally, I was born in the mid-90s, and so when I was first growing up, technology wasn't really like a big thing. Like people didn't have a lot of people didn't have cell phones. We had televisions and things like that, but a lot of people didn't have cell phones. A lot of people didn't have personal computers in their house because they were still really expensive. And just from the time I was born to now, obviously technology has changed so much. All of us have technology in our homes. I'm using a computer right now. I mean, we're teachers, right? Teachers use technology all of the time. Every brick and mortar teacher has a computer in their classroom. Most brick and mortar teachers have technology like smart boards or projectors, things like that. And as online teachers, we use technology every single day. We teach online, which is probably something that was unfathomable to people 20 years ago, right? So maybe more than 20 years ago. So anyways, this poses a very interesting problem for people who are raising kids in this modern age of technology. How do we responsibly expose our children to this technology, make sure that they're using it correctly to their benefit and not to their disadvantage? This is especially important because technology is not going to slow down. It has been increasing exponentially. In fact, there is a law called Moore's Law. It's not actually a law. It's more of a theory, but they're calling it Moore's Law because it's been true for the past few decades. And basically in 1965, a guy made a prediction that every year, the number of devices on a computer chip, so devices like little things actually on the computer chip, will double. The number will double every year. And so far, it's been proven true, right? Computers have tiny, tiny, tiny little chips now with tons and tons and tons of things on them. And back when computers were first made, a computer took up an entire building. Now computers fit in our pockets. So that's amazing, and it's been proven true. And the advancements aren't slowing down. Computers have changed so much since 1980 that if automobiles, cars, had improved at the same speed, we could probably drive from one end of the United States to the other in 2 minutes. I wish, right? Somebody needs to get working on that. But that is how fast computers have been improving. And in the future, there's a lot of people who think that AI is going to start taking over, artificial intelligence. And when I say taking over, not like taking over the world, but like dominating huge parts of our lives. In my opinion, it already has started to. We have Echoes and Alexa, we have Cortana, and we have Siri, right? Those are all artificial intelligences that help us in our everyday lives. I use Alexa every single day to play music for my daughter. I use Alexa to ask questions when my husband and I are not really arguing, but arguing about something that we don't know the answer to, right? And so I know I'm not the only one. And so technology is not slowing down. Technology is not going away, and technology is something that is going to be somehow even more prevalent in our children's lives in the future. So it's really important to figure out how to introduce them to it, how to create a healthy relationship for them with it, and how to foster their growth and creativity using technology. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So we are going to figure this out together, guys. As at-home educators, we're going to figure it out together. How do we deal with technology? How do we introduce it to our children? I want to start by going over the guidelines that the American Academy of Pediatrics has put out in regards to children of different ages and screen time. The American Academy of Pediatrics is pretty much the go-to for all things with children, right? They are a team of researchers and scientists that research these things. They have tons and tons of knowledge and tons of resources at their fingertips that they can use to then put forth these guidelines. So I think it's important to look at what they have said. So the AAP, the American Academy of Pediatrics, has said that for children that are younger than 18 months, there should be no screen use besides video chatting with family members. For children, I cannot talk today, guys. For children 18 to 24 months, you should choose high quality programming and apps and watch with your children to help them understand what they're seeing. For children ages 2 to 5 years, they should have no more than 1 hour a day, and you should also still be viewing everything with them. And for children 6 years and up, you should use consistent limits on media and make sure that it's not interrupting their sleep or exercise habits. They encourage you to do things like designate media free times and locations and communicate openly about the best practices of being online and staying safe. Now, after I read that, I was like, okay, that sounds great. But I noticed once you get past 6 years, it kind of gets a little vague. They're not giving you, some real clear, strict guidelines. And there's actually kind of a lot riding on these guidelines that we are going to have to make for our children. So according to scientific research, there is not a one-size-fits-all approach to dealing with social media and screen time and children, right? Like most things with kids. Nothing can ever be straightforward and easy. Am I right? I'm right. I can hear you all saying, yes, you're right. You're right, Brittany. So, like I said, the rest is up to us as parents, and there's a lot riding on this, guys. There's a lot of things that can go wrong, and there's also a lot of things that can go right. I'm sure that most of you have heard about the detrimental effects of technology and probably about the good effects of technology as well. It has been proven that too much or poor quality screen time has been linked to things like childhood obesity, irregular sleep schedules, behavioral problems, and attention problems in the classroom or at home, right? They're not going to listen to you or their teachers as well. They're not going to be able to absorb information as well. A loss of social skills, violence, which that's pretty vague. But they think it stems from things like video games and lack of social skills, so people don't know how to deal with their emotions, and less time for play. And play, as we all know, is very important to a happy, healthy, and growing child. So those are some of the bad things that can happen from too much social media, or not social media, too much screen time or poor quality screen time. But there's also a lot of great things that have been proven to be able to happen because of screen time. And those really good things are things like early learning. So kids are learning things at earlier ages or being exposed to concepts earlier because of these new technologies. And then that's promoting earlier learning in them. Exposure to new ideas. So the internet is a wonderful thing, as we all know. Kids are now able to use the internet to find new ideas, new ways of thinking, and see them and think about them and learn about them. Increased opportunities for social contact and support, right? So this is kind of contradictory, right? It could be that screen time could lead to loss of social interaction, loss of social skills, or increase in social skills. This is because of things like social media. And then also opportunities and access to health promotions and support, right? There are tons and tons and tons of campaigns for kids like this. The one that I always think of is Nickelodeon. I'm not sure if they still do this, but Nickelodeon used to do I think it was called like a Get Out and Go Play Day, where they would literally stop all the programming on their channel on TV, and on the screen it said like, get out and go play. And so it would encourage kids to go outside and play for that amount of time because there was nothing on the television, right? Tell me if you remember that, because I know I'm not the only one who remembers that. So, like I said, a lot of these new benefits come from the new types of technology. A lot of research has been done in the past on television, because television was one of the first mainstream entertainment sources that came into households with children. And so a lot of the research has been done on television. But a lot of the new benefits are coming from new types of technology that children are being exposed to, like social media, apps and games, and not just television anymore. So it seems obvious that what we want for our kids are those benefits. We don't want those disadvantages, right? Nobody wants to disadvantage their child, or if you're a teacher, you don't want to disadvantage your students by giving them poor quality screen time or too much screen time, right? So how do we make sure that the screen time that they're getting is that quality screen time that the American Academy of Pediatrics wants us to give our kids, that we want to give our kids? And as I was reading through these guidelines, I noticed a very big emphasis on the word quality. So they really push for quality screen time, right? Children should be interacting with quality screen time. That's what they legitimately say in their articles. And so quality, once again, is a very vague word, in my opinion. Quality can mean lots of different things to lots of different people, because one person's interpretation of good quality is different from another person's interpretation of good quality. One app that I think is a good quality app might not be a good quality app to someone else. So what I have done is I have formulated my own interpretation. This interpretation is based on my own education and background in early childhood, as well as the research I've done in preparation for this episode. So we've got the American Academy of Pediatrics, very, very vague guidelines, and now we've got teacher Brittany's guidelines. So here they are. For children that are younger than 15 months old, there's really no benefit from screen time, in my understanding. In my early childhood education research, I've worked in early childhood for a really long time, and so when you work in early childhood, you do a lot of training on the different early childhood development theories and things like that, as well as through my education courses. I actually watched a few scientific studies and learned about a few scientific studies that show that children who are acquiring language actually cannot learn from a screen or from a recording. They have to learn from a human. A very interesting study that I watched was they took a few preschool age children, well, before preschool, they were in the language acquisition stage, so around 15 to 18 months, and they had a person come in and read a book 3 times a week in one group of kids. And then on the other group of kids, they had a person play a recording of a book while they flipped through the pages of the book. And the kids who had the actual person reading to them actually acquired some new language from that reading. Whereas the kids who just listened to the recording were not able to acquire any language. And there are a lot of different theories on this, but basically, if a kid can't see the mouth moving, if a child can't hear the inflection as well, if they can't see a human being interacting with the text, then they have a much harder time conceptualizing that in their head and then applying it to the real world. So really, the main focus of the stage between 15 and 18 months is exploring the world and acquiring language, and lots of other skills like social emotional skills, cognitive skills, things like that. And those things cannot really be acquired from an app, from technology, from a recording, from a video. They just can't. So really, screen time doesn't benefit children that are that age. And so they have to learn from interactions, and I think that, like the American Academy of Pediatrics has said, I think that video chatting is probably the best way to let them have screen time. This way, at least they're interacting with a family member. At least you're there to talk with them, and you can model that interaction for them. And, then your family is appeased too. My family lives a few hours away, and so we're like right on that cusp of like, well, we could come visit you like every weekend, or you could come visit us like every weekend, but it's just far enough so that like it's a little bit of an inconvenience. So they're the perfect candidates for video chatting. And with my own daughter, video chatting is super fun for her. She like holds the phone up and like makes noises and stuff like that. But I think it's important for a parent to still be there when you're doing that, so that then your child can better understand what's going on and how to interact in that platform. So that's 15 months and younger. Okay. So moving on, next age group is 15 to 24 months. So this age group is like the toddler phase, right? I know children or toddlers past 2 years, but this is like the beginning toddler phase. So I think that at this point there is a benefit from introducing your kids to screen time and to media, but you really have to be there. So if you are going to let your child watch a television show or use an app, you should really be there to help them learn how to interact with it. When it comes down to it, you're helping them build digital literacy skills, which is like understanding how to use an interface and how to interact with an interface. My daughter, she is almost 18 months old, and she thinks everything is a touchscreen because sometimes we play like an app on my phone or on the tablet that I have. And so she's applying that digital literacy to everything. Like if she sees a computer screen or really any screen, she'll try to touch it. So that's really what you're working on at this age. They're not really like absorbing anything, I don't think, from like the educational games. They're not going to like learn a word still from watching a video, or learn like, oh, you should be kind to your friends from watching a show, because they still don't have the ability to conceptualize that. So really what they're learning is digital literacy. They're learning how to interact with technology. So if you're watching a show with them, you need to model how you want them to interact with their TV shows. Do you want them to act surprised or, react to what the characters are doing? You need to react to what the characters are doing if you want them to do that, so that then they know how to react in those situations. Same goes for using apps. If you want to teach your child how to use an app or how to access something, you have to show them how to do that. So using a touchscreen, using a keyboard, things like that. That's what you're teaching them at that age, and that's what screen time is going to do for them at that age, in my opinion. All right, so now we come to the fun age, the real kid age, and that is ages 2 to 5 years. So in my opinion, at this age, kids can start using media more for entertainment purposes, but this is when you have to start being careful, because you want them to be educational, right? You want whatever they're watching or whatever they're using to be educational. Now, according to the research that I've done, some of the most educational things still at this age are like television shows. And some of the best television shows are things like Sesame Street and other PBS programs. Those programs are publicly funded, and so they've had the most research and scientific input put into them to develop them. They make sure that they are talking about things that are relevant in today's society, like how to be active, how to avoid childhood obesity, tackling things like, I know on Sesame Street, there's a character who has a parent, they just introduced this, a parent who is dealing with opioid addiction, which is something that's crazy that they have found out a way to deal with that on Sesame Street, but it's something that affects a lot of us, sadly. There's also things on Sesame Street like characters that have developmental delays, and so that kind of shows how children should interact with other kids that might be different from them. It has characters of all shapes, sizes, colors, and animals and monsters, so it teaches them that everybody looks different and that's okay. I really like Sesame Street, if you couldn't tell. So I think Sesame Street is one of those great ones that is good for your children to watch. But you can also use educational apps. This one gets a little more complicated because scientifically, a lot of these apps have not been proven to actually be educational. They're not following any kind of educational standards or anything put forth by any kind of educational entity. But I mean, I think we can determine what's educational and what's not. There are some apps that are just mindless, like Angry Birds, and there are some apps that are, more helpful for your toddler, which would be like matching colors or sorting items or things like that. So just be mindful of what apps you are exposing your children to. And something that I found that was really, really interesting was that ebooks have actually been found to reduce comprehension skills at this age. So I have come across some apps that are like, it's like a book that your child can interact with on the screen. And what scientists have found is that all the bells and whistles and things really distract your child from what's actually going on in the book. And so it can lower their comprehension skills. So ebooks are a no-no, in my opinion. You should just get normal books, paperback, hardback, board books, whatever, to read to your child. Don't use ebooks. All right, so the next part is where it gets a little complicated. So this is school-aged children, and this is complicated, number one, because I don't have a school-aged child yet. My daughter's only 18 months old, so she's not school-aged, and I haven't had to deal with this yet, but I have taught middle school, so I have some background knowledge with school-aged children. And also this gets hard because there's such a wide age gap in school-aged children. School age is from 5 years to 18 years. So that's very, very different. So kind of broke it into two age groups. So the first age group would be ages 5 to 13. This is like adolescence, like before you're a teenager. And I think that at this time, it's just super important to set rules and boundaries with screen time and technology. You need to designate when your child will have screen time and when they will not, and where they can have screen time. So set rules like no tablets or phones at the dinner table. Set rules like, okay, between 2 and 4 p.m., you are not on your screen, you are doing your homework, or, whatever you think is best as a parent. And I think it's also important to talk to your kids about the screen time that they're having. So if they are watching a show, ask them about the show. Ask them what they're learning, things like that. And just discuss what they're learning with them. But I think between the ages of 5 and 13 is kind of when you can start setting those expectations and those boundaries more easily, because they're not a teenager yet and they might not rebel against you as hard. I might be wrong, who knows? But those are my thoughts. So ages 5 to 13, you start setting those boundaries. Then from ages 13 to 18 is where things probably get complicated, because those are the teenage years. So once again, I think that the same rules kind of apply, but it's a little harder to enforce them. 3/4 of teenagers in the United States own a cell phone. So they're walking around with a computer in their pocket, access to the internet 24/7. 70% of teenagers maintain a social media portfolio, which means they have more than one social media site that they use, more than one social media account, and they're constantly on them as well. And 3/4 of households in America have some type of video gaming system, like an Xbox or PlayStation, that kids regularly use as well. So teenagers especially are constantly surrounded by technology and have a lot of access to technology, like the internet, to streaming services like Netflix and YouTube, things like that. So they are constantly connected. So I think that the rules that I talked about for the age 5 to 13-year-olds kind of just apply even more to 13 to 18-year-olds. You really, really, really need to set those boundaries and those expectations. And you really, 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 and I cannot stress this enough, need to talk to your children. As a middle school teacher, I heard some things that my students were doing on social media that made me worried. That's the only word that I can use to describe it. The types of pictures that they were posting, the types of interactions that they were having, the things that they were talking about was upsetting sometimes. And of course, I would try to talk to them, but I'm not their parent in the end. And I only have so much influence on them. And so, in my opinion, it is very, very, very important to talk to your teenage children about how to use technology, about what they're exposing themselves to on technology. about their privacy, about how to interact with others on technological platforms, on social media platforms. You need to make sure that they're watching things that you would want them to watch, right? There's not much more I can say about it. I just think that it is so important, especially for teenagers, to talk to them about how to responsibly use technology. And if more people do that, I sincerely think that our use of social media and technology as a whole will become better, and that your children will reap more benefits than disadvantages from social media. I cannot stress how much I believe in talking to your kids about how to use technology. So please, please, please make sure you're doing that, especially at that age. So that's my interpretation. I think that overall, it's just important to have a plan. It's important to have a plan and to have something set forward about how you want your family and how you want your children to use technology. And it's important for you to set an example for your child as well. So as I was perusing the internet and looking through all these AAP guidelines, I found that they have a really cool thing called a family media plan tool. And I will let you guys listen to a little bit about it.
The American Academy of Pediatrics Family Media Use Plan will prompt parents and family members to enter information about the ages of their children, and then writes up a customized plan for your family that lets you and your kids determine how you're going to use media in your home.
All right, boys, time to eat dinner. No devices at the table.
Sharita and Jason Worthy have found the media plan tool very helpful.
So it's a pretty cool little tool. I did go check it out myself, and basically it does exactly what you just heard. You put in your child's name and age, and then based on their age and based on the AAP guidelines, they help you come up with a plan that best fits your family. You can put custom rules in there if you have rules that they don't have, and then it creates a document for you. You can print it out, you can post it in your house, you can give it to your kids, you can give it to your spouse, you can give it to your family members, whatever you want to do with it. And I think it's really cool. So I highly encourage you to go and check it out and play around with it. It actually inspired me to kind of create a family plan of my own. Since my daughter's so young, I didn't really create a whole plan yet, but I did put forward some goals for my own household, and I thought that it would be fun to share them with you. So remember, my daughter's only 18 months old, so this is my goals and my plan according to her age. The first goal that I have is that we will not have a phone or a tablet at the table. That goes for her and for my husband and I. So my goal is for us to leave our phones away from the table, and for my daughter to not have her tablet. Now, I do want to clarify this. She does have a tablet sometimes, but it's because I have to do her hair, and she will not touch her hair while I'm doing it if she doesn't have the tablet in her hand. So that's the only time that she uses the tablet. So we might still have to do that because her hair is getting to a point where it's so long, it pokes her in the eye, and so I have to put it up, and that's the only way she'll let me do her hair. So that might be an exception, but we're not going to have the tablet or phones at the table any other time. My next goal is that there will be no tablet in the car unless it's over a 1-hour drive. And then if it is over a 1-hour drive, she can only use the tablet or the phone in 30-minute increments. If you have a small child, you probably know the struggle. After about an hour in the car, some kids go to sleep, but my child likes to get very uncomfortable and start screaming. So sometimes we give her a phone game or a tablet just to entertain her. She likes to watch Moana. She'll watch like the first 30 minutes of it and be pretty quiet, and then usually she might go to sleep. So if it's under an hour, I do not want to give her the tablet. I do not want to give her a phone. We'll just have to deal with the screaming. And then if it's over an hour, I want to limit it to only 30 minutes at a time, just so that she can be entertained and not be upset the whole time while we're driving. All right, the next one is no TV 1 hour before bed. This one's going to be hard because my husband likes to watch TV before bed. My daughter goes to bed at 7:30, so we obviously stay up past then, at least a little bit. We usually get in bed around 9, and so my husband's usually watching TV while I put my daughter to bed, And so I want to try and start turning the TV off and spending maybe some family time together playing or something before bed, before we start getting ready for bed. So no TV an hour before bed. We'll see how that works out. My next goal is to have my phone on the charger while we're playing. So I tried to set up kind of a structured schedule for our day, my daughter and I's day, just because I find that if I don't, I go a little stir crazy. So I try to plan things like getting out of the house, designated playtimes and crafts and things like that. So my goal is for when we're at a park or when we're doing a craft, my phone is away and not out and I'm not on it, so that we are spending quality time together and I'm not distracted. And then the next one is no unsupervised TV or tablet time. I know this is going to sound terrible, but I know I'm also not the only one. Sometimes Mama has to get something done. Like if I'm working on feedback after classes, or if I'm trying to get a podcast up and my daughter's awake. And sometimes it is easiest just to put on a show and have her watch it while I am there, but I'm not directly supervising her and I'm getting some work done. Now, I know this might not completely go away because, like I said, sometimes Mama has to get stuff done. But I really want to try and stop doing this. I don't do it that often, but I know it's not good, and I feel terrible about it. And so that's something that I really want to start trying and eliminating from happening. All right, so that's all my goals. I really hope that this inspires you to create your own goals when it comes to screen time and technology. Remember, everyone's is going to be different depending on the ages of your children, depending on your own thoughts and beliefs as a parent, depending on how you interpret the AAP guidelines or how you interpret just screen time in general. So I would really love to hear about your guys' own goals when it comes to screen time for your family. So as always, please make sure that you reach out to me. You can reach out to me through a few different platforms. I am on Facebook and Instagram. I also have an email and a website, and those are all linked in the description below. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. I did a lot of research, and as always, I have linked everything that I have used to do my research in the description below. I have also linked that family media plan tool in the description, so make sure that you go check that out. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. There are some very interesting articles, so I highly encourage you to go read them and check them out for yourself. And that's it. So, as always, guys, I hope that you are teaching regularly, playing often, and living your best life. And I will talk to you very, very soon. Have a wonderful week. Bye, guys. Thank you so much for listening all the way to the end of this podcast. If you'd like to check out any of my older podcasts, then you can click here or here. If you'd like to follow me on any of my social media, then you can find those in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell so that you are notified every time there is a new episode, and I cannot wait to talk to you again soon. Bye! Say bye-bye! Bye-bye!